what we could synthesize is that agriculture is 80% important, level of 80% important driver for all deforestation worldwide. So it is the key driver, and that's for the most part commercial agriculture, but to a significant and also subsistence and local agriculture driven by local needs. So that's a bit the current understanding that we have on how important specific drivers are. There is a link with MRV because, first of all, if countries want to develop strategies, REDD+ strategies, interventions, so what they want to do in terms of REDD+, they have to understand what drivers are active. I mean, you need to know what's changing your forest if you want to do something about it. So it's kind of a chicken and egg thing. You need to understand the drivers first, but many countries don't have very good data on that. But you should do that if you want to get a good national strategy. And that can be quite easily be done with more direct or proximate drivers, like you can look with remote sensing, okay, you have a forest land that is cleared and that's cleared to agriculture or mining or urban expansion. So I can get some understanding of what's the proximate cause of deforestation. What is much harder to do is the underlying drivers, which may be related to population growth, economic growth, demands for wood and food, and some of these things. We did this assessment as part of the CIFOR Global Comparative Study, and we found that the majority of countries do have capacity gaps existing, which is back to REDD+ NRV. Maybe that's not too surprising. There are a few countries who have pretty good shape: India, China, Mexico, but there are many others, particularly African countries, for example, who have large capacity gaps. And so this capacity gap will need to be closed if you expect countries to participate in REDD+ into a results-based compensation scheme at some point in time. So capacities vary quite a bit. And that's why we think that, for example, a stepwise approach or some kind of step-by-step approach of continuous improvement or cyclic improvement is needed to help countries to gradually improve capacities, because that's not something that can happen overnight. And also donors have to have realistic expectations on when it comes to these things. It cannot just come overnight. It's a bit of a process, and it requires sustained support. We've just released a new report with CIFOR that just will be presented at the side event on Wednesday. And there we actually looked at country experiences in building national forest monitoring capacities. And what was quite clear is that, looking at countries in India or Mexico, that it has taken 10-15 years easily to start with very low capacities, but come up to a level which is quite good. So things can happen. But what's very important is that countries report success factors, which are related to good institutional setup, strong links between the sectors, sustained support, political support, but also, for example, the engagement with higher education and research to continuously improve, and as a driver to continuously improve your monitoring activities. And we've seen also countries like Guyana who have already taken quite important steps, starting with very low capacities, but with the support of Norway really propping up their monitoring activities. So they're actually able to report to Norway since 2 years. So all of that is a bit included in that report. So to make that point that improvements can happen, MRV capacities can be developed, but it is always a country-driven process, and it may take time, particularly in countries that start off with low capacities. The most important thing I think countries can do and have done is to link your forest area change monitoring with drivers, to get activity data that can give you some idea on how important specific drivers are, at least from an activity data point of view. And that's what countries usually have done. And that's more to really to help the policy design. So what is my most important driver of change? And then as part of that, you would go in and then think about maybe what about other pools? Are they effective? And you can, like I said, if you have a lot of soil carbon in your country, you have a lot of peatlands or something like that, or a lot of organic soils, and countries usually know that. Then you can say, okay, really, and then there's a lot of change on these as well. Then you say, okay, well, cannot omit that. So you really have to include that. Or, for example, you may have a lot of fire. Some countries may have a lot of fire, and that's another specific type of change that you can monitor using specific tools. So, yeah, countries need to assess. They usually invest first in just getting a good sense of the drivers, because that's important for their policy design. And then they think about what I'm really trying to do in terms of REDD+ interventions. And then you have to set your priorities based on that. And that may include soil, fire, other gases, all these kind of things that are usually harder to do, but if they are important, then they need to be done. REDD+ monitoring, national forest monitoring, and MRV will be the key issue that Substar will discuss. So starting tomorrow until Saturday, Substar has to come to some draft conclusion, some draft decision that then can be approved by the COP, and that will be the sole issue. I hope that we'll see something on institutional, some recommendations on institutional setup. I hope that we see something on, really giving a bit more guidance to countries, because countries start to work on this, but it's a bit of an open space, and more guidance, I think, can help countries to streamline efforts to use the resources that they have available to do it, to really do that in a streamlined way. And I think that's where more guidance is actually needed. And that's where the Substar can really help.